Times, an American television sitcom from the 70s, was, for lack of a better word, DY-NO-MITE. It had a DY-NO-MITE cast and a DY-NO-MITE producer. However, behind the scenes, it also had dynamite problems. The series aired for 6 seasons on CBS from 1974 to 1979. It was created by Eric Monte and Mike Evans and developed by executive producer Norman Lear. The seeds of Good Times were sown several years earlier when another Norman Lear TV production called All in the Family aired for the first time in 1971. People couldn't get enough of the Bunker family. It was outrageous, groundbreaking, and quickly became the #1 watched show in the country. It also changed the face of primetime television with a new brand of social and political controversy and made Norman one of the most powerful producers in Hollywood. During the first season of the show, Mike Evans, who appeared as a supporting character, and friend Eric Monte approached Norman with a sitcom concept. It was about a Black nuclear family living in a Chicago housing project. Norman loved it. Fun fact, Norman told Mike and Eric to write everything up, he'd put together a contract, and they'd split everything 3 ways. The Writers Guild, however, wasn't having that. If Norman wasn't going to be doing any actual writing, then he couldn't be given credit as a creator. By now, Norman was already working on the pilot for All in the Family's spin-off, Maude, which would air the following year. Maude Finley, played by B. Arthur, was Edith Bunker's cousin. Viewers really took to the no-holds-barred relationship between her and her maid, Florida Evans, played by Esther Rolle. Florida's husband, Henry Evans, played by John Amos, also made an appearance. During the development process for their new show, Mike and Eric found themselves constantly butting heads with Norman over one major factor. According to Eric, he was constantly told to take the father out of the picture. When it was all said and done, Norman took the script to Esther, who agreed to do the show, but only under one condition. Her character must have a husband and father for her children. Norman agreed, and mainly on the strength of his clout, CBS committed to 13 episodes. Now, casting could begin. John signed on to reprise his role as Esther's husband, whose name would be changed from Henry to James. The role of the couple's youngest son, 11-year-old Michael, went to 12-year-old Broadway actor Ralph Carter. Fun fact, the character was named after creator Mike Evans, who portrayed Lionel Jefferson on All in the Family and The Jeffersons. Also, Ralph was almost replaced with Lawrence Fishburne because of a prior commitment to the musical Raisin. The producers of that show allowed him to tape the pilot while he was still doing the play so he could keep his job. Since Michael was a passionate activist and very socially aware, they needed someone more comedic in the mix to provide contrast. Enter 24-year-old Jimmie Walker. The stand-up comedian seemed the perfect choice for the role of eldest child, 17-year-old James Jr., or JJ, a budding painter. Fun fact, at the sitcom's inception, Esther was 53 versus only 34 for John. Jimmie, meanwhile, was only 8 years younger than his TV father. Professional dancer Bernadette Stanis secured the role of middle child, 16-year-old Thelma, a bright girl who takes education very seriously. Fun fact, Chip Fields also auditioned for the role of Thelma. The producers kept her in mind, and she was later cast as Penny's abusive mother, Lynetta Gordon. The cast was rounded out with Janae Dubois, a Broadway actress. She left New York and came to Hollywood looking for a fresh start. She ended up getting a part in a play, and, as fate would have it, Norman Lear was in the audience on opening night. He offered her the role of the Evans' neighbor, Willona Woods, a recent divorcee who works at a boutique. Esther, though, wasn't happy about it. She thought because the show was written around her being the lead character, she should get to do the hiring. Good Times, debuting in February 1974, centered on Florida and James Evans and their 3 children. While on Maude, the couple was considered middle class, with Florida working in suburban Tuckahoe, New York, and her husband as a New York City firefighter. However, now they lived in a public housing project in a poor Black neighborhood in inner-city Chicago. The project is never named, but is assumed to be the infamous Cabrini Green homes, shown in the opening and closing credits. The gospel-style theme song was composed by Dave Grusin, with lyrics written by Alan and Marilyn Bergman. It was performed by Motown artists Jim Gilstrap and Blinky Williams, with a gospel choir providing background vocals.
Good time. Anytime you need a payment. Good time. Anytime you need a friend. Good time. Anytime you're out from under. Not getting hassled. Not getting hustled.
Fun fact, one of the lines of the song that has long been disputed was believed to be hanging in a chow line, when it's actually hanging in and jiving. Early episodes of Good Times dealt with some serious subject matter, such as unemployment, racism, sexism, child abuse, and overcoming poverty. However, it was Jimmie's character of JJ that was an immediate hit with audiences and became the breakout of the series. His frequent use of the expression "DY-NO-MITE" became a popular catchphrase.
Here I am! 18 today, happy, bright, narrow man, and pure dynamite!
As a result of the character's popularity, the writers focused more on JJ's comedic antics instead of serious issues. The attention the character was receiving from both the writers and fans was difficult for the rest of the cast to handle, especially Esther. After all, the show was created as a vehicle for the classically trained actress. Now, someone else was taking center stage. John didn't like the direction Good Times was going in either, and didn't hold back in letting the powers that be know. He even threatened to leave the show altogether. To smooth things over, a compromise was made to give him a leading man's salary. Another issue that was always prevalent was having a bunch of white people write for a black show. According to Eric, their minds were completely closed and there was no opening it. They were adamant that they knew how to do black humor. Fun fact, during the second season, Eric walked away from Good Times. You see, he'd recently written a script for a movie called Cooley High. So when he went back to the set of Good Times, and it was clear the back and forth bickering was not gonna stop, he decided to leave, since he knew the movie would be a hit. And a hit it was, even inspiring the 1976 TV series, What's Happening? Then, in the September 1975 edition of Ebony magazine, John and Esther vented their criticism of the show's writers and producers in an article called Bad Times on the Good Times Set. When word got back to the producers, they were furious. Not surprisingly, after season 3, John was fired. His departure was initially attributed to his desire to focus on a film career, but he later admitted that Norman called him and told him that his contract option with the show was not being renewed.
The differences we had on that show, and we had a number of differences, as evidenced by my early departure from the show, was I felt that with two other younger children, one of whom who aspired to become a Supreme Court justice, that would be Ralph Carter or Michael, and the other, Bernadette Stannis, I think, she aspired to become a surgeon. And the differences I had with the producers of the show was that I felt too much emphasis was being put on JJ and his chicken hat and saying dynamite every third page, when just as much emphasis and mileage could have been gotten out of my other two children and the concomitant jokes and humor that could have come out of that. But I wasn't the most diplomatic guy, like I said, in those days, and they got tired of having their lives threatened over jokes. So they said, to tell you what, why don't we kill him off and we'll all get on with our lives. Life's too short. So that taught me a lesson that I wasn't as important as I thought I was to the show or to Norman Lear's plans. And he was not about to have a disruptive factor. That was neat, a disruptive factor. I got the call, we were on hiatus, when I found that I was no longer to be a part of the show. And Norman's secretary at that time, a very nice young lady by the name of J.D. Joe, called and said, John, Norman would like to speak to you. And I thought that was kind of unusual as we were on hiatus. And so Norman got on the phone. He said, Big John. I said, yes, Norman. He said, I've got some good news and some bad news. What do you want first? I said, hey, it's your dime. You made the call. He said, well, the good news is we've been picked up for another season, which was a foregone conclusion because we'd never been out of it. Once we broke into the top 10, we never were out of it. And we stayed in the top 5 for quite a few weeks, if I remember correctly. One way or the other, I couldn't understand why he was calling me to tell me that we were renewed. And then he said, you want the bad news? I said, sure, how bad can it be? He said, you won't be with us. And I said, nothing. I didn't say a word. I let that register for a minute. He said, you still there? I said, yeah, I'm here, Norman. Well, don't you want to say something? He said, what can I say? It's your show. Have a good life. Click.
The producers decided not to recast the character of James Evans, instead opting to kill him off. In the 2-episode season 4 premiere, the Evans family learns of James passing in an automobile accident, just as they're getting ready to join him in Mississippi, where he has a promising new job. Fun fact, Florida shouting "damn, damn, damn" in a meltdown after James dies was voted as one of television's most famous moments.
Damn, damn, damn!
With Florida now widowed, it left the door open for a new leading man to come on the scene. Enter appliance shop owner Carl Dixon, played by Moses Gunn. He and Florida began dating and eventually became engaged. Feeling that the departure of John increased her importance, Esther then asked for more money. Norman had no intention of giving it to her, and even went so far as to ask the writers if they could do a show without a mother or father. They assured him they could. By the end of season 4, Esther left. With both the matriarch and patriarch gone, Janae took over as lead actor, as Willona checked in on the Evans children, and JJ became somewhat of a surrogate parent. In season 5, Janet Jackson joined the cast, playing Penny Gordon, an abused girl abandoned by her mother and eventually adopted by Willona. Also during that season, Johnny Brown's character, building superintendent Nathan Bookman, first introduced in season 2, became more prominent. Sadly, ratings continued to decline. Fun fact, around this time, Jimmie was offered the role of the Scarecrow in the 1978 movie The Wiz, but had to turn it down because it conflicted with his Good Times taping schedule. Michael Jackson was cast instead. Before the taping of season 6 began, the network and the show's producers decided that they had to do something drastic to increase viewership. They approached Esther with an offer to appear in a guest role on the series. She was initially hesitant, but when producers agreed to a number of her demands, including an increased salary and higher quality scripts, she agreed to return on a full-time basis. She also wanted producers to make the character of JJ more responsible, and requested that producers write out the character of Carl Dixon, who Florida had gone on to marry off-screen. But it was too little too late. Despite changes in the series at Esther's request and her return, plus the addition of Thelma's husband, football hopeful Keith Anderson, played by Ben Powers, to the cast, ratings continued to fall, and CBS canceled Good Times during the 1978-79 season. The series' finale episode, appropriately titled The End of the Rainbow, airing in August 1979, closed on a positive note, as every member of the Evans family finally made it out of the projects. JJ gets his big break as a nationally syndicated artist for a comic book company. Fun fact, Norman Lear hired artist Ernie Barnes to paint the pictures which JJ used in Good Times. His 1976 painting, The Sugar Shack, which was used during the closing credits, served as the cover for Marvin Gaye's 1976 album, I Want You. In 2022, it was sold at an auction for $15.3 million. Michael attends college and moves into an on-campus dorm. Keith snags a new football contract and announces that he and Thelma are moving into a luxury apartment in the city's upscale Gold Coast district. She also announces that she's pregnant with the couple's first child. Keith offers Florida the chance to move in with them so she can help Thelma with the new baby, which she accepts. Willona becomes the head buyer of the boutique and announces that she and Penny are also moving out of the projects. She then reveals that her new apartment is in the same apartment building to which Keith, Thelma, and Florida are also moving. She and Penny become their downstairs neighbors. Fun fact, Norman Lear was often criticized about the characters in Good Times living in a slum and perpetuating so many stereotypes about the Black experience. This eventually led to the creation of The Jeffersons, which attempted to show a Black family in a more positive, upwardly mobile light. On November 17, 1998, Esther Rolle died from complications brought on by diabetes. She was 78 years old. As promising of a professional future as co-creator Eric Monte seemed to have after he walked away from Good Times, it was not meant to be, as some unfortunate twists and turns his personal life took made that quite difficult. A series of strokes led to a spell of anti-seizure medicines and the loss of some memory. A couple of years of crack cocaine abuse robbed him of money, dignity, and a circle of Hollywood friends. Attempts to sell a self-published book drained the last of his savings. According to some friends, though, Eric was his own worst enemy. He was prickly about script changes, refused to endorse plots he considered degrading to Blacks, and wanted more control. When it came to ownership, though, he says he was frozen out. Then, in 1977, he filed a lawsuit accusing ABC, CBS, producers Norman Lear, and Bud York and others of stealing his ideas for Good Times, The Jeffersons, and What's Happening. While he did eventually receive a $1 million settlement and a small percentage of the residuals from Good Times, opportunities to pitch new scripts dried up along with his money. He'd been blacklisted. He lost his car, his home, and almost all the trappings of his successful life. Over the next nearly 3 decades, he drifted in and out of homes of various friends and family. By 2005, home had become a Salvation Army shelter in Bell, California, just south of downtown LA. The following year, with the help of the Illinois State Representative, as well as family and friends, he was able to move back to his hometown of Chicago to begin rebuilding his life. Sony Pictures Home Entertainment released the entire series on DVD in North America between 2003 and 2006, with a complete box set following the separate seasons in 2008. In 2013, it was announced that Mill Creek Entertainment had acquired the rights to various television series from the Sony Pictures library, including Good Times. They've subsequently re-released the first 4 seasons on DVD. 2 years later, they re-released Good Times, the complete set on DVD in the US and Canada. All episodes are currently available to stream on Peacock. On April 6, 2015, Alton Powers, professionally known as Ben Powers, died of liver cancer. He was 64 years old. On February 17, 2020, Jeanette Teresa Dubois, professionally known as Janae Dubois, passed away of cardiac arrest at her residence in Glendale, California. Her age at the time of death is unclear, as several different dates of birth have been listed. That same year, it was announced that Good Times would receive an animated sitcom revival, with Norman Lear executive producing, alongside Seth MacFarlane and Steph Curry for Netflix. On March 2, 2022, Johnny Brown passed away in Los Angeles. He collapsed shortly after leaving a doctor's appointment for a pacemaker and was pronounced dead after arriving at the hospital. He was 84 years old. Sadly, whatever comes of the revival, Norman Lear will no longer be a part of it. He passed away on December 5, 2023 from cardiac arrest as a complication of heart failure at the age of 101. Good Times celebrated its 50th anniversary in February 2024.